In today's gospel, Jesus certainly knows how to thin out a crowd. It said the great crowds were following him, but it really was never the intention of Jesus to have these huge crowds follow him. Because certainly, if there was just a matter of having huge crowds follow him, then Jesus could have followed the example of the devil, who said to him in the temptation, just go up to the top of the temple, jump off, and float like a feather down, and then the angels will uphold you, and the people will come adoring and worshiping you. Um, Show him the big signs, the big wonders, and yet that's not what he did. Um, because when we think about the Acts of the Apostles, we see why. Because certainly at the time of Jesus' passion and death, there was opposition from the religious leaders. And even though there was the empty tomb, that did not mean that the religious leaders somehow accepted the Lord, that they went over wholeheartedly. Maybe a few did, certainly, but many decided not to. So there was always going to be that pressure from family and friends to say, don't do that. Don't go with them. Why were you going with that group? Don't you know that Rabbi so and so says this, or the religious leaders say that, or why would don't do that. So there's that peer pressure from family and friends not to join the disciples in worshiping the Lord Jesus. So there certainly is that. And then once that doesn't prevail, because certainly like Jesus himself, he was able to have his teaching authenticated with signs and wonders. So too, the apostles, we see that they're preaching and teaching and authenticating their message with signs and wonders. So the people are continuing to come. So the next round would be the local persecutions. We see that with Stephen. We see that with James, who was the first apostle to be martyred for his faith in 42 AD. We also see that in Gentile territory when Paul goes to Ephesus and the idol makers say, if we continue to let these guys continue to preach, then people are going to go over to their message and they're going to go away from ours, and we're not going to be making money creating and manufacturing these idols. So they stirred up a local persecution against Paul and the disciples. So a local persecution. And then lastly, the empire-wide persecution under Nero, with the split between those who followed Jesus and those who did not. The Jews were able to have some religious freedom, not to have to worship the emperor. So they didn't have to worship the emperor. Well, now there's a split between the two. So now they were saying you have to worship the emperor. So they have that choice of either apostatizing or agreeing to say no, that this is not who we are. We only believe in the one God, and Caesar is not God. So even those good things Jesus was saying to the people, even those good things like family, have to take a second place in our life. And, we certainly see that in the world today. We certainly see that, especially with young people, having tremendous pressure not to conform to society, to conform to the world, not to give their lives to Jesus, not to be active in the church. Even when I was in high school, in a public high school, we called those who were involved in the church, we called them Jesus freaks, not just the ones who were involved in maybe some weird kind of an odd group or sect or something like that, but even the ones who were just following their faith would be kind of insulted, and there was that conformity to try to get them to come to join us, to join the secular crowd. So that we see that much more even today. Certainly if someone is bold in their faith, they are going to stick out. They are going to be, ostracized or shunned or whatever in their groups. So again, that idea of peer pressure, Then also we see local persecutions, especially in many parts of the world. It might be from militias, it might be from members of the government, it might be from different places, but the town or the village is they will burn the church. They will beat up the parishioners of that particular church. So again, a local persecution. And then there are some that are even national persecutions. We see in many parts of our world where to be a Christian is illegal. It's not acceptable to be a Christian, and it could result in their punishment or even their death. So we see that today. The other thing that Jesus does is that he talks about, uses examples from the way of life that they knew and understood to explain that need to have committed disciples. He talks about, that you're not going to build something without having the money to do it, unless, you start to build and then after a while you can't afford it, and then people are laughing at you that, oh, that was the one who was going to build something and just didn't have the money. Or the king who, seeing that there's a nation coming at him with 20,000 troops, can he successfully withstand the attack with only 10,000 troops? But if he can't, he's going to sue for peace terms. And so again, even in the secular world, there has to be that kind of a commitment, whether a financial commitment, whether it be commitment of resources and troops, that you need to have those resources. Same too in the church. If you're going to have a persecution, if you're going to consistently see, as many times we see today, just slightly ramping up, slight amount of more non-acceptance of the Lord, pressure coming upon them. We've seen more advanced in Europe and in Canada. But what makes us think that we're somehow going to be exempt from that? So again, what we want to see is that commitment on the part of the people. And how do we then go about getting commitment? I think that's one of the questions that we really have to consider, is that, this idea that we can just somehow, put kids into school and everything's going to be fine, or we can somehow put them in a religious education program and everything is going to be fine. I don't think we realize how strong the evangelization is by our culture. And so how do we best equip the students today to withstand that onslaught of secularism? How do we do that in our jobs? How do we best do that? And I think we need to think about that and to contemplate that and to pray about that in a major way, because if not, then we'll certainly be sucked in by the crowd. Thanks. God bless.